Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna.
Hare Krishna, you can get started, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Today I'm going to read the book Srila Prabhupada's Lilamrita, 5th chapter. In the midst of these calamities, Abhay felt more than ever the need to propagate Krishna consciousness. He had something to say to the war-weary citizens of the world, and he longed for a more effective forum, a publication of some kind, a way to present the world's crisis through the eyes of scripture in the same bold style as had his spiritual master. There was no shortage of ideas, and he had been saving money from his business for this very purpose. Yet, how could he dare produce such a journal when even learned sannyasis, senior disciples of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, were not? He never considered himself a great scholar among his god brothers, although they called him Kavi and now Bhaktivedanta. As a grihastha, he wasn't expected to take the lead or publish his own journal. But times had changed. The English journal, The Harmonist, had not been published since before Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's passing away. Now, almost a decade had passed, and the Gaudiya Math had been too busy fighting in court to consider preaching. Long gone was a tireless spirit that for 10 consecutive years had produced the daily Nadia Prakasha. No longer were four separately located printing presses pumping out transcendental literature under the direction of Bhaktivinoda Thakura's empowered son. The presses had been sold by Kunja Vihari. Times had changed. The Gaudiya Math was only fighting, while the non-devotees were killing each other in a world war. From his front room at 6 Sita Kanda Banerjee, Abhay conceived, wrote, edited, and typed the manuscript for a magazine. He designed a logo, a long rectangle across the top of the page. In the upper left-hand corner was a figure of Lord Chaitanya, effulgent with rays of light like rays from the sun. In the lower right were silhouettes of a crowd of people in darkness but groping to receive light from Lord Chaitanya. And between Lord Chaitanya and the people, the title unfolded like a banner back to Godhead. In the lower right corner was a picture of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati seated at his writing, looking up thoroughly as he composed. Above the logo ran the motto, Godhead is light, nescience is darkness. Where there is Godhead, there is no nescience. Below the logo were the following lines, edited and founded under the direction order of His Divine Grace, Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada by Mr. Abhay Charan Dey. Abhay had already gained some printing experience in connection with his business, and after completing the manuscript, he brought it to Saraswati Press, the best printers in Bengal. He also hired an agent, Calcutta's prestigious booksellers Thakur, Spink and Company, who would take responsibility for distributing the journal to bookstores and libraries, including outlets in several foreign countries. But when he went to buy paper, he met with government restrictions. Because of the war and the subsequent paper shortage, they wanted to assay what he had written in terms of the national needs. During this time of world crisis, an ordinary citizen's religious newspaper was hardly top priority. Abbay's request for paper was perfunctorily denied, but he persisted. He appealed that using paper to print the teachings of the personality of Godhead was not a waste and not untimely in the present troubled atmosphere. Finally, he obtained permission to print his first edition of Back to Godhead, a 40-page publication. Abhay Charan greeted his readers by defining his motto: Godhead is light, science is darkness. When man forgets that he is the son of Godhead and identifies himself with the body, then he is in ignorance. He is like a man who is very concerned with the automobile's mechanism, yet with no knowledge of the driver. The defect of the present day civilization is just like that. This is actually the civilization of missiles or illusion, and therefore, civilization has been turned into militarization. Everyone is fully concerned with the comforts of the body and everything related with the body, and no one is concerned with the spirit that moves the body. Although, even a boy can realize that the motor car mechanism has little value if there is no driver of the car. This dangerous ignorance of humanity is a gross missiles and has created a dangerous civilization in the form of militarization. The militarization, which in softer language is nationalization, is an external barrier to understanding human relations. There is no meaning in a fight where the parties do fight only for the matter of different colored dresses. There must be therefore an understanding of human relation without any consideration of the bodily designation of colored dresses. Back to Goddard is a feeble attempt by the undersigned under the direction of His Divine Grace, Sri Madhbhakti Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada, the celebrated founder and organizer of the Gaudiya Math activities, just to bring up a real relation of humanity with central relation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That there is a great and urgent need of literature like this is keenly felt by the leaders of all countries, and the following statements will help much in the procedure. It was 1944, and Abe specifically addressed the crisis of World War. The world's political leaders were expressing their disgust at their people's suffering and scarcity. After 4 years of fighting, costing millions of human lives, the Second World War within 20 years were still scourging the earth. Although, end, although the end was in sight, leaders expressed not so much happiness and hope as weariness and uncertainty. Even if this war ended, would there be yet another war? Had man not yet grasped the vital lesson of how to live in peace? Abe quoted the Archbishop of India. India, guided by God, can lead the world back to sanity. He quoted the President of the United States. A program, therefore, of moral rearmament for the world cannot fail to lessen the dangers of armed conflict. Such moral rearmament, to be most highly effective, must receive support on a worldwide basis. He mentioned former President Herbert Hoover, who had affirmed that the world needs to return to moral and spiritual ideals, and he quoted a resolution by the British House of Commons affirming that spiritual principles are the common heritage of all people, and that men and nations urgently need to acknowledge the sovereignty of God. He quoted Wendell Willkie, who, after his return from Russia, he reported millions of Russians killed, wounded, or missing in the war, and millions more suffering from a winter of terrible scarcity and subjugation. Hare Krishna. So today's reading talks about how Abe felt the need to propagate Krishna consciousness in the midst of crisis. He wanted to present the current crisis to the world through the scriptural perspective. In 1944, amidst the turmoil of World War II and the subsequent paper shortage, he argued that using paper to print the teaching of the Godhead is not a waste. Abhay Charan, despite his status as a Grihastha and the inactivity of his god brothers in the Gaudiya Math, felt an urgent need to fulfill the instruction of his spiritual master Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati to preach in English. Abhay expressed his confidence that the spiritual resources of India could be used all over the world. For his hometown in Calcutta, he conceived, wrote, and edited the first issue of a magazine titled Back to Godhead, featuring a logo and a bold motto: Godhead is light, nescience is darkness. Where there is Godhead, there is no nescience. After persistent efforts to overcome government paper restrictions, Abe published the 44-page journal, which presented the transcendental messages of the Vedic scriptures, particularly the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. He thought that this is the only true solution to the world's crisis. His writings were all messages from the Vedas in the context of the crisis which was going on in India at that time.